How y'all doing? I'm sorry, Kwame. I always like to mess with Kwame. Um, that's my guy. Listen, it's an honor to be here. I just want to look at this room. I know we're using every single inch in this room. I'm gonna call it out. I know. Don't worry about it. The air conditioning is real low in case it gets hot. Um, but this is an honor to be here, and I'm just so thankful that you all decided to be with us. It's really an honor. So with that, I'm going to introduce my panelists with me, well, actually, this is the dream team over there. I'm going to ask them to come on stage now, and I'll introduce you all. Ms. Carol Naughton, um, Jennifer Blatz, and Dreama Gentry. Awesome. That person yelling is Marlene Fox. Hi, Marlene. We look forward to a rich discussion. First is thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you're all over the country doing amazing work, and I'm just honored that you had a couple minutes for us. We appreciate it. I'm gonna do quick introductions. The bios are long, and they only gave me a couple minutes, so I can't read all of their accomplishments. I'll allow them to identify the parts that are most salient for this room. But just a couple sentences for our panelists. So Ms. Carol Naughton is a CEO of Purpose-Built Communities. It's an incubator and catalyst for social change dedicated to improving racial equality. Carol serves on the board of directors of the Low Income Investment Fund and serves on several national advisory boards, including Build Healthy Places Network and Fifth Third Bank National Community Advisory Forum. She is also an amazing golf professional, and she has the coolest and most comfortable shoes of anybody here. Jennifer Blatz is a nationally recognized leader and expert in building place-based partnerships who has designed and implemented community improvement strategies for over 2 decades. She currently serves as president and CEO of StriveTogether, leading the organization's efforts to drive systems-level transformation in over 23 communities across this country. I should note, she looks less stressed than she was about 4 weeks ago, as StriveTogether just hosted their national convening in San Francisco. Thank you, Jennifer. And Dreama Gentry. Dreama is a founder and president and CEO of Partners for Rural Impact, leading the organization for over 25 years, from a 2-person team in 1 school district to nearly 500 team members deploying over $40 million in resources across the country to improve educational outcomes for rural students and communities. I should note, she is also a Duke of Hazzard, Kentucky, where she, Jeff Canada, and the Secretary of Education were there to get the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th Promised Neighborhood Full Service Community School grant in this country. At one point, the secretary leaned over and said, "How do you keep getting this grant?" She says, "Because I know what I'm doing." Yeah. So with that, please give them a round of applause. So we're gonna try to engage in the conversation. There is a ticking clock, so I'm gonna try my hardest to not go over. But I do wanna make sure that people get a chance to learn a little bit more about you, your organizations, and really your perspectives on this work. So really this is for anyone. Carol, I'll ask you to start first, but your 3 organizations have made really tremendous contributions to place-based efforts. You support community revitalization, Cradle to Career Success across this country. I'm intrigued just to know, get your reflections. What are some of the similarities of the work that you all are doing? And then I'm also intrigued as to what is the unique approach, if you think you have one, that focuses pushing all of us towards social and economic mobility.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. First, it is so cool to be up here with Jennifer and Dreama. We've gotten to know each other better over the last 18 months, and I feel like I've got my sisters up here as we're learning together and kind of demystifying the work that we each do. So I have discovered over this last year and a half that we really do have a lot in common. We all look at data to inform kind of the strategies that we want to use to improve outcomes for kids. We all recognize that a cross-sectoral approach is really important, and we all really know that place is critical. Place shapes us. For purpose-built standpoint, we are neighborhoodists. That word does not roll off the tongue, but we are neighborhoodists. We know that neighborhoods really shape who we are, who we become, and what our opportunities are in life. And so purpose-built's contribution, I think, to this emerging field is thinking about building neighborhoods that really become platforms to prosperity for everyone who lives in those neighborhoods, really thinking about what do we need to do so those neighborhoods really drive economic mobility, better health outcomes, and greater racial equity for the people who call it home.
Thank you, thank you. Jennifer, I'd love to get your perspective as well.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. It's great to be here, and I just want to echo what Carol said. It's wonderful to be on this panel. And I'll also echo, I mean, just our similarities. I think it is really that our organizations and all of you in this room, we hold this strong conviction that regardless of race, ethnicity, zip code, or circumstance, every child should have an opportunity to reach their full potential. And so that is absolutely what unites us. And we also realize that we can't get to every child if we're working in our individual silos. So Carol mentioned being a neighborhoodist. StriveTogether's approach to this work has largely, to start, had been focused on more regional geographic scopes. So the majority of the partnerships across our network, which spans nearly 70 communities across 29 states and the District of Columbia, is primarily at the regional or county, or in some cases multiple county geographic scope. And so with that approach, what we're really looking at are what are the systems and structures that need to shift at the regional level to ensure that every child has every opportunity. And we can't do that without working deeply in neighborhoods. And so that is what is so exciting about this emerging field, this gathering of leaders, is that we know that in order to achieve the goals that we're working to achieve collectively, we're going to have to work, and we've been increasingly talking about this at StriveTogether, and I know across this field, from the neighborhood to national. So that we're really, and Kwame, thanks for mentioning, we're going to use a lot of jargon, and so I'm going to start that off, I think, in some ways, but we talk about cradle to career civic infrastructure, and we have to be building this at the nested, starting with neighborhood all the way to national to influence the change we're trying to make.
Thank you. And Dreama, I'd just love to get your perspective. Obviously, you've been doing and been in this field for a long time. I'm intrigued just to get your perspective, and specifically, obviously, from the rules perspective.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's great to see folks. I just posted on social media that I feel like I'm with my people today, and I think it's important to be in places like this where we know that everyone believes in the American dream and in an America where every child can be successful. And so I do think that when we think about Partners for Rural Impact, our work is to ensure the success of all rural students from cradle to career. I've had the honor, the blessing to be mentored by Jeff Canada, Angela Glover Blackwell. When we got that first Promised Neighborhood Planning Grant back in 2010, my thought was, what can I learn from these folks in Harlem? And it really opened up sort of my blind spot, right? That in this country, there's a lot I can learn from Harlem, and there's a lot that Harlem can learn from Harlan, Kentucky, because we're the same America. And so our work has been, as practitioners at the local level, doing this cradle to career work in place. But also, the big uncomfortable step we took about 2 years ago is realizing we needed to step into the national space and ensure that rural kids and the folks that care about them and work for them were in rooms like this. And so we've actually got a strong partnership with StriveTogether. We've got a strong partnership with Harlem Children's Zone. We're working with Carol and Purpose Built. So the piece is, I guess, that we bring into the room, Christian, is how do we learn from all the different models and ensure that they're translated and showing up in rural places? And I was reminded recently, we can't forget about our tribal places and our indigenous communities. And so that's one of the other pieces. When we look at this room, there's still some people missing from the room, and we're committed to ensuring that we represent all places.
Thank you. As I'm listening to the similarities and even your unique approaches, there's some themes. One is a focus on social and economic mobility, an explicit focus on it. recognizing that every child, every community deserves this opportunity. The second, I think, Carol, you mentioned it, and I know this to be true for Dreama and Jennifer, is focus on data. And not, what I like about the Sisters Club, I'm a thorn of these roses, but is that I know that it's not just data for data's sake. And we talked a little about this yesterday. Sometimes we collect a whole bunch of stuff, but we don't do nothing with it, right? We look at it periodically to justify maybe pretty much to show our impact or to try to get more money from a funder. But is there the opportunity to use that data to actually move action? And I appreciate for the work that you're doing. I'm intrigued, though, to hear from your perspective on, what are the bodies of evidence? What's the science behind some of the work that you've done? Where are some of the things that you've been able to look at and to show your impact or to demonstrate for this country? What are some promising practices? I'm just intrigued on the science component of this work and not just the heart. So, Dreama, can I ask you to start there if possible?
Sure. And one of the things of growing this work in rural America is we had to grow it using federal dollars, which was a blessing because we had to get good at the data, the evidence early on. And so I do think for us, it's thinking first and foremost at that child level is what are the interventions that move K readiness, third grade reading, and those things. And so over the years, it's cultivating and testing out things that are on What Works Clearinghouse, but also things that are just sort of out there that we feel works. And so we've developed sort of a cadre of services, Cradle to Career, which is why we've been successful with Promise Neighborhood. That's an essential piece. I think what we saw with the pandemic was that the community school model as the container for the evidence-based practices is critical. And so we're really working to scale up in rural communities and rural schools, the community schools model, because having those coordinators at the school who's actually then working with the school to implement the practices made a difference. And we had a community school, a full-service community school that had started just before the pandemic. And the staff, and I will say that I think the reason it also works is that it's local people who are staffing community schools. They know the community, they know the families. So when the pandemic hit, these folks became the lifeline for those kids and those families. And it was one of the districts that we saw within our region that actually did not have the great learning loss that others did. So I would say it's evidence-based strategies at every key touch point, but also things like community schools, which recognize that it is a caring individual who is proximate, local, and knows the families.
Thank you. Jennifer, I'd love to get your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel, so when I think about the evidence and StriveTogether's approach, our approach, we have a codified approach to what it looks like to build Cradle to Career civic infrastructure in a community, and a core principle of that is evidence-based decision-making, data-driven decisions. So it's really about the practice of how you use evidence and building the capability of practitioners to use data, both from the science. I love that this is about the science and the heart. So there is a strong evidence base, as Dreama was naming. We have the What Works Clearinghouse, we have evidence-based practice, and we also have to build the capability of our leaders in our place-based partnerships to use data and evidence in real time. And that is, not a skill that all of our, it's not a skill or capacity or capability that all of our leaders have. And also there's the time piece. So how do we do that faster? How are we learning in real time? How are we using data to drive our decision making? So when we think about evidence at StriveTogether, it really is about building that capability to learn what practices are getting outcomes. How do we share that across our network? And I think, increasingly what we're going to want to do as we continue to build this field is create the container so that we can share those practices. And it's not always about replicating an evidence-based program. We find always that there are practices in our communities that are getting incredible results that need to be shared. And so really creating the space to be able to share that practice.
Thank you. Now, Carol, I'm going to let you answer that question, but I also have a more targeted one for you. But I would love, just in case you want to talk about y'all evidence too, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just be brief. We have been, over the last couple of years, really looking to build out our capability to measure our impact, to be able to know and share what we've learned over time, and how we use that data to make mid-course corrections. So we're looking at building out really a practice with our network and with our organization to be able to do just that and make sure that we've mapped out what's happening in the communities to those big three goals that we're trying to reach around better health outcomes, economic mobility, and racial equity.
Great. So the more targeted question was that I know that many of on this stage and many in this room have been part of a larger place-based effort, trying to help think about how this field coalesces, has similar thoughts and ideas, and ultimately moving towards similar outcomes. I think I saw Jeff Edmondson and our colleagues from Balmer here who have been really forces behind that. Go, Jeff. Here's my man. But I'm intrigued just to get your perspective on kind of the larger effort, right? Part of what we wanted to do in this convening is we wanted to bring in multiple parts of this field, right? So it wasn't just one individual organization or one network of organizations. It's over 121 organizations representing, a number of different perspectives of how to do this work in place. But I would love just to get your perspective on the opportunity that sits in front of us as it relates to this field and some of the work that's been happening behind the scenes to help pull us together.
Yeah, thank you. So I will be honest, when I was first asked to be part of this field building work, I was skeptical. I thought, oh my God, it's another thing.
Me too.
Right? Another thing to add to what is already an overly full plate. And so I went in trying to keep an open mind, but with a little bit of skepticism. And over the last year and a half, I have become convinced it is essential if we're going to be able to do what we all aspire to be able to do. And so I share that because I think it's important that we all know that it's yet another thing. And it is a thing, and it takes a long time, and it takes attention from our organizations. I think that the things that we have focused on about why build a field, right? Is this field building work going to be able to scratch your itch locally? That's the real question right now. We think building a field should be able to attract more resources into the work that we all do, and we all know that's important. We think it ought to be able to help us remove some of the barriers to the work that we all try to do and do that at a higher, faster level. We think it should attract talent to the field. How many people here in this room thought that this is what they would do when they grew up, right? I mean, a couple of folks, but most of us found ourselves in this work almost by accident, and we want to create clearer pathways to this work for young people to be able to be engaged and to blow this up, and that's part of what building a field means. But I will tell you, it is only important if it's important to you. If it's an intellectual exercise that a bunch of us are engaging in, that is not worth our time. If it's making a difference in your life, if you can see changes as a result of this field building work, then it's worthwhile. And so really it will be up to you all about whether this field building work continues, how robust it is, and what the resources are that we have to be able to engage in it.
And
Go ahead,
Christian,
please, feel free.
We're just going to jump in. We're
I
gonna
know,
take over.
I've been on a panel with y'all before. I know how this is.
We're about to take over.
So I do think, let's de-jargon it, because when we started talking about a field, I'm like, what the heck is a field? And to me, it's community. And I was out in Aspen with Eric Stegman, who's with Native American Philanthropy, and he said something really powerful. We have to find the time to build community. We have to find the time to stop, breathe, be in place with one another, and learn and connect. And I do think, to me, it's building a community that comes together around the shared purpose and figures out how do we optimize what we're doing. And so that's sort of, in my mind, I think of it as community building that is also technical, and we can share it for the philanthropists who need to call it a field. But, yeah, I just wanted to add that.
And
Go ahead,
can I,
Jennifer, go. I'm
gonna
gonna just
jump
put
in.
my mic down and y'all can keep talking.
well, I mean, I think so. Dreama just brought the heart, and I'm going to also bring some science, and to keep with the theme here, because and I agree with everything that Dreama just said, and I know Carol does as well. And related to this field, we have to have a shared result. And when we came together as again field intermediaries, and I also want to echo that what Carol said is what has been top of mind for all of us who are leading in this field space. What does it look like for you who are doing the work on the ground that is most proximate to the work that we're trying to do? But when we came together, we did a data walk because we all love data. And when we looked across what our national organizations are doing, we see that we have a set of indicators that happen to be the proxy indicators, starting at kindergarten readiness all the way through career, for putting a young person on a path to mobility that we're aligned around, and we know you're aligned around. And so holding the community building and the results and the rigorous approach to measuring what we can impact in this field is going to be critical to the field building work that we're working to do.
You know, I want to give a shout out. to
Okay,
when
I'll be quiet.
I'm gonna, yeah, we'll get back to you in a minute. But when we first started with the steering committee on the field building work, I was surprised that the first thing we did was spend the first 2 meetings getting to know each other better. And that, I was like, okay, let's get to work. And then I realized that it was really wise for us all to slow down a little bit and get to know each other so we could build a sense of trust and community, because that was essential before we could move forward with the hard work that was to come. Okay, Kristen.
Well, we'll let you go back.
Thank you. I'm thankful that you were able to share some of that perspective. Now, I know in the jargony world, this is field, what they're talking about. The reality is that for most of us, including my colleagues here, we're spending 99% of our time doing, right? You're literally doing every single day. And this provides a space, and I hope you use this conference in particular to think about what you're doing, right? Because we're used to doing. We're fairly good as firefighters to go into the crisis, to provide the additional assistance for families, to find that housing voucher for them, to find food. This convening the conversations around a field provides us an opportunity to think about what we're doing so that we can do it better and for more and more efficiently and more effectively. That was pretty good. Y'all give me a clap for that. I needed 2 minutes of my own to say something. Any closing remarks from you all as you think about the horizon? What's something that you want this group, this convening of leaders, to know and to take back as they're thinking about this work? And this was not on my iPad. I just made that one up.
Yeah, I think that, you just talked a little bit about creating space to think big, right? We all get caught up in what's on our to-do list. And creating space, having a little bit of cash in the bank, and at the same time, knowing where you're going, but having that space to innovate and that space to think about where you want to go and how you need to continue to tweak and evolve is really important. And I know particularly folks who are on the ground doing this really hard, complicated work every day feel that sense of urgency about the work because people are in real pain. And at the same time, being able to pull up and spend a few minutes thinking about, are we doing what we've always done, or are we doing what needs to be done today, and thinking about what we need to do in the future is incredibly valuable. And this kind of space and being with your colleagues here who are living in that world with you, take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think what's top of mind for me is, we have set, at StriveTogether, we've set an ambitious goal of putting an additional 4 million young people on a path to mobility by 2030. And when I started talking about with that goal, people were like, oh, that's exciting, we can galvanize around that, but do you believe that's possible? And I will say, we're very data driven, we do believe that's possible, and it has, is there a question that that's possible? We're talking about an additional 4 million, and there are 100 million we should be thinking about in this country. So it has to be possible. It has to be achievable. It is, Jim said it best, everything feels impossible until you do this work, until you achieve this work, and we can achieve this work, but we can only do that if you stay in this work. Because we can set these goals together as a field and share accountability for moving young people, but you have to stay in this work. And talent has come up a lot in our field building conversations because this work is so hard. As Carol said, we're creating the space like this to be with one another and to support one another and to really build up one another and keep one another in the work is what we have to do. And that's we feel an accountability to that as I know leading in the field intermediary space, what can we do to support you? How do we help aggregate resources that you need on the ground in your communities, but also just creating this space and this container so that you can be together and talk about what's hard and share and not have to reinvent the wheel and work with one another is something that we have to keep doing.
And I think for me, I'm really excited that StriveTogether put that 4 million number out because it is a bold number, but I think it is attainable. And so we've been thinking as we think about rural places around the country, and so we're committed to ensuring that 1 million of those 4 million are actually rural young folks, right? And so I do think, how do we align and share outcomes and goals and work together? I do think the other piece that was really hard for me, I'll just own it, not us, me, to get my head around is I have to look up from doing the work in my place and the deep work around working with young people and families in this time of urgency to think about the policies, the systems, and the politics. And so we're living in a country right now that's extremely divided and polarized. And there's a lot of efforts out there trying to prevent us from thinking about the all. And so I think it's important to take the time, and I think a big part of what the community, the field can do is give us an opportunity to come together as rural places, as urban, as suburban, as tribal places, to actually say, no, we demand that policies and investment support children and young folks. And so you guys, I think that's the extra burden that you all carry, is you have to do the work of the moment, but you have to find the time. And we're here to support you in thinking about how do we also think about the systems, the policies, and really the alignment with communities that others want us to forget about and to write off.
Well, please, I want to thank each of you for your time, your leadership in this space. It's truly an honor to share a stage, and also, more importantly, to see that the work that you're doing is impacting people all over this country. So with that, please give my distinguished panel a round of applause. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.